What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, October 14th. And we have, it's not even daily anymore. We just do like 42 shows a week during the NFL season. It's fun. And we have a new show that's going to premiere every week. Joining us now for her first of many appearances, weekly appearances, senior NFL insider at CBS Sports, Josina Anderson. Josina, what's up?
What's up? I appreciate, you're really good at that intro stuff. Sounds like you've been doing it a lot.
For like 7,000 days in a row. Debo, who produces the show, the voiceless, the headless Debo, the floating head that is Debo, the brains, the voice. He, I'm surprised he hasn't gone insane yet from listening to me do those intros.
No, he has. He's just covering it up.
That's actually probably true. Follow Josina Anderson on Twitter at Josina Anderson. Watch her on Thursdays and Sundays on CBS Sports HQ, which you can, and now you can see you on YouTube too at youtube.com/pick6, because all of our shows, of course, are on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like and comment on this video. Tell us, tell us something, whatever you think. Our stat line for Odell Beckham this weekend with the Browns, because that's our first topic of conversation. And one that I think is very interesting, because Odell Beckham, once upon a time, a slam dunk Hall of Famer, the premier wide receiver in the NFL, gets traded to the Browns. The expectation is he'll be the alpha there. And he and Baker just haven't found a way to click yet. Is there something good? My theory, Josina, is that because Odell is Odell, that Baker or whoever his quarterback is when he's on the field, like sort of gravitates towards feeding him as opposed to letting him become a natural part of the offense. Is that a viable theory, or is there something else why Odell and Baker maybe haven't clicked yet?
I think that there are multiple reasons, starting with the logical one in terms of just lack of time in comparison to his other targets. When he first got there, Baker Mayfield had a very natural relationship with Richard Higgins. Obviously, Jarvis Landry, people who have been there before had more time with him. And then obviously last year he got hurt in week 10 with the ACL injury and, has not had the same amount of time with regards to coming into the season and on the field, since he didn't start until 3 weeks after, or the third game. But at the same time, when you're looking at just the last game, I think that's where it really stands out against the Chargers. I believe he was like 2 for 20 on 3 targets, but, he was on the field like 80% of the snaps. And that's a lot of time to be on the field with the ball only coming your way 3 times. So that's what they definitely have to fix. I know I was just mentioning this on CBS Sports HQ, where I asked the source about this and how much does it have to do with the amount of missed time. And they were saying, no, Odell has been out there. And that, there are some frustrations behind the scenes with wanting to get him involved more. Now, Odell addressed this today. He did admit he wants the ball. He didn't quite say like Keyshawn Brinson. You got the point.
Give me the damn ball. You can say that.
Sure. Yeah. Right. I mean, you got the point. But I think he's evolved in his diplomacy with how he explains it.
I think so too.
Yeah, he's evolved, but we'll have to see. Now, it's a very good opportunity to get the Cards coming in town. So if they have a big game, everybody will shut up.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I know over at Establish a Run, Josh Hirschmeyer does this thing with air. It's like a fancy analytical air yards. It's basically who's getting targeted, who's having the ball thrown their way, but it's not connecting. In other words, like if you're getting chances, if you're getting opportunities and it's just not hitting, eventually it's going to. There's just some randomness about it that sometimes it works like that. And Odell Beckham has popped up on there twice. The only downside for this week with the Cards coming to town, and we mentioned this on the Pick Show, which will be up in the feed tomorrow morning, Friday morning, the wind looks like it might be nasty in Cleveland on Sunday, like 20-mile-an-hour wind when the game starts. If that's the case, I mean, look, Baker can whip it through anything, but I would bet that the Browns lean on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in a very windy situation. So I'm not saying that it'll be another week for Odell, but I think I as an Odell backer, I want him to have a blow up game. And he was it 2 weeks ago where he really should have had a monster game that Baker just whiffed on 2 throws. Is there any way that should we be worried at all that OBJ might, if let's say he doesn't have a great game this week, Is there any way that maybe the wheel gets a little squeakier? Because he's not being that squeaky relative to what you might expect from someone with his previous on-field shenanigans.
Well, I would say that I think that regardless of how the game goes, or even whether it's the next two and maybe even up to three, just because of the people are pointing to the trade deadline coming up, which I don't think that should be the case. Let me just be on record with that, and I'll go into why I explain that in a second, or why I feel that in a second. But I think regardless of how it turns out in the game, that Odell is going to maintain his composure with regards to what everyone sees in public. So I don't think you're going to have that. Now, if it doesn't materialize like that, I think there will definitely be some more hot discussions behind the scenes with regards to it needing to get fixed. And from the standpoint of, Odell wants to be great. He's said that, from jump when he was a part of the New York Giants in terms of, caring about the legacy and caring about, performing up to his abilities, as any player should. At the same time, he does realize, and I think he mentioned this in his comments today, the opportunity that he has as far as title-wise with this team, and the unique opportunity of playing with your best friend. As far as why I don't think that the Browns should consider trading Odell Beckham Jr. is because I use the analogy of the Pittsburgh Steelers when, Le'Veon Bell couldn't get things worked out. And they were touting, James Conner, and everyone was talking about, and rightly so, James Conner was performing very well. But I always said, even at that time, I said that on the air, NFL Live, I kept saying, but what happens if James Conner gets hurt? What happens to Conner? Then it's a whole different story. And everyone's always caught up in the moment of when the other person is playing well. But if that other person's not playing well and the other person is gone, that changes the complexion. And the last point I'll make about that really quickly, Brinson, is that yes, they were able to get into the playoffs with OBJ hurt, but they were not able to beat the elite teams in the playoffs without him. And you go back to the division game against the Chiefs, that is a game that if they had Odell Beckham Jr., I believe they would have won.
And I mean, let's be realistic here. When you look at the depth chart, and obviously it doesn't feature Jarvis Landry because he's on IR, and Landry's a stud, but Landry's also not Odell. They're very complementary pieces because Landry can just, PPR machine, tons of catches, not exactly a deep threat per se. But I mean, are you rolling into the playoffs trying to win a title with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, and Anthony Schwartz as your top three wide receivers? That feels like a foolish endeavor. And if you're the Browns and you traded Odell Beckham now, I mean, the Browns are an analytically driven front office. The first rule is they're not going to sell low. Like, you don't buy high and sell low. It's the opposite. So I'm with you. I don't think they're trading Odell Beckham. I understand why his name gets brought up, but look at his contract too. He's got $15 million left on the final 2 years of his deal with no guaranteed money. They can get, if things were to somehow get bad, they can move on from him, fairly easily after the season. It would be crazy to dump him right now and try to win with. I like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but it ain't.
Yeah, well, I think they have very complementary pieces as far as the weapons and things like that. And people are very high, even with Jarvis Landry, talking about, it's really his, kind of alpha two, let's say, on the field that really, just kind of brings that different energy with them well. So, I hear when I talk to the Browns, people talking about the uniqueness also of what Jarvis Landry brings. I just think that when you talk about the macro goal of the postseason, you want to have both of your main dudes on the field. So one is taking attention from the other when you're in, a pass play. And then also you just never know what happens even with your run options. Any one of those guys just over the course of the season can fall, to attrition, and you want to go in with as many weapons as you can. So if the goal is to supersede what you did last year, as in actually winning the division game and moving on to the championship game, I would think you want all of your weapons. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So who's calling from the NFL? That someone's calling. Did I take that call? I don't know.
You can take the call if you want. You can take it on air if you want. We've done weirder and worse things than take a phone call on air. All right, let's move on and discuss. Actually, you know what? Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will look at other names that could be moved at the deadline. All right, so looking around the NFL at the people who might be traded, like at some point, the Houston Texans are going to have to say, all right, Brandon Cooks, you see, look, he's very good. He can be traded for the 4th time in 5 years. He seems like a logical name to get moved for a team that's trying to reload or completely start, just start over. Reload might even be a fair word. Deshaun Watson, of course, is a name that is going to be hot and heavy as we head towards the trade deadline. What do you think will happen with Watson when it's all said and done? Does he get moved before the trade deadline, or is just too much obvious? I mean, I don't want to say too much. Is the stuff off the field too much for another team to acquire him at this point, given the price it would cost?
That is the question of the last 2 weeks here for an NFL owner, whether it be, Stephen Ross of the Dolphins, whether it be Lurie of the Eagles, or anyone else. I mean,
David Tepper of the Panthers.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just from the standpoint of, yes, they did make an offer. But they seem, pretty happy with Sam Darnold, unless something drastic here happens where they're just like, ooh, maybe we should wink our eye again.
Yeah.
And I haven't checked back with my sources since I, kind of went hard on it on Twitter like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, just to give it some time to evolve. However, the thing right now is owners obviously want to have more clarity in his cases. And
Sure.
last time I checked, there wasn't any progress in the civil talks with regards to any settlements. And then you have Deshaun Watson's lawyer involved in another case, at least as of last week, that was also, having to deal with that. And then with regards to the criminal, case at the point of last week, and I would even say up through now, that there was no word on when that was going to get presented to the grand jury. So as of right now, you have a real possible chance of an owner having to make a decision with literally zero extra clarity as of right now. Now, what do they say? And I think Andrew Brandt says this on Twitter all the time, deadlines for
actions. That's right.
Maybe that will, encourage Deshaun to go ahead and sign off on some, civil settlements, or write a letter to Goodell and saying, I'm doing this, because I'm really trying to get on the field, but I'm not really, having this sort of, feeling towards this or whatever it may be in terms of things that I've heard behind the scenes. I don't know if that will happen. But here's the other thing is that if they don't move, okay, you have to consider not obviously having him for the rest of the year. And if you're waiting for a full adjudication of the cases, particularly however things evolve with the criminal side, based on what my sources told me and what I reported 2 weeks ago, this could take a full year or two. So it's almost kind of like, if you want to, how should I say this, get married to Deshaun Watson, maybe just go ahead and do it now, accept all the bad stuff up front, not saying that I'm not lessening it,
right.
Deal with it, right? Assuming that once it is, at some point, there will be a resolution, we'll see how much it's satisfactory to the parties involved. But at some point, you will have some sort of resolution to which you can then look, we'll have them here all the way after. When you look at Tom Brady, how long he's playing right now, right?
Yeah. In other words, it's look, as Andrew Brandt, again, the business of football. We can, as Steve Keim once said, if Hannibal Lecter ran a 4.40, he would be on a professional football team, right? Like, no matter what is off the field, if you're a really good football player, you are going to be you're going to be of interest to NFL teams. And what's kind of interesting, I think, from the perspective you're talking about the timeline, the Dolphins have Tua and don't have to make a decision on his 5th-year option for at least another year. They don't know if they love him. And then the Panthers have Sam Darnold with his 5th-year option coming up next year. So in theory, if they wanted to acquire Deshaun Watson now, they could go get him and be like, look, we're not playing him. We have a quarterback. We're not playing until things are resolved. But we believe in Deshaun, or whatever you want to spin it. The only downside of that is if you're
go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying the only downside of that is if you're Miami and you're 1-5, like you lose to the Jaguars in London, all of a sudden you might be giving away a top 5 pick, which is less than ideal. Although maybe the Dolphins. Did the Dolphins already give away their own pick? Yes, the Dolphins gave their own pick to Philly. The Dolphins have San Francisco's pick. So you're incentivized. Your own pick's already out the door. So you're incentivized not to lose games because you could be giving away a top 5 pick. So in other words, if somebody acquired Deshaun Watson, Do you think they're all like playing him right away?
Now that right there, Brinson, is the question. Okay. You're actually right on the nose with that question. And, kind of, I've been pursuing the answer to this question. I did get the answer to it. And the source, kind of backed off and then, whatever. And then when it's not as clear, then, you don't necessarily go with things. But how should I say this? The reason why that's on the nose is because if you go back before training camp, I was the first one to tweet that Deshaun Watson was not going to be put on the exempt list. People were like, what? But then you saw that he's not been put on the exempt list. And the reason is because, as I was told and I explained on Twitter, so I'm not saying anything, whatever, is because, I've been told that the league has learned its lesson with regards to trying to adjudicate things themselves too early in advance of official words coming from the courts and cops and things like that. And in this case, they haven't had to really say things early because, unlike Adrian Peterson, or I can't remember the defensive player for the Cowboys, or Ben Roethlisberger, what have you, those players wanted to play for their team. So it really has taken the pressure off. However, as Brinson has gotten on the nose with this question, if he is now on another team, clearly the desire to play changes. So that becomes now the question of the hour. What happens when he comes to another team? And I'll just say the first thing that I was hearing, I didn't hear any fear with regards to that because it sounded like, how do I say? It sounded like there was an expectation that Deshaun Watson would not be playing.
Right.
And then, my next question was, well, you're going to put that, does that mean because he'd be on the exempt list or, whatever? And, just trying to, kind of hear what the teams understand that are involved in these, conversations or what have you. And the answer that I got at the time is that everyone who's kind of involved, behind the scenes, owners and people are talking about this stuff, is that there's a desire for there to be clarity. But then I explained at the time when I was on the phone that there's not going there. The likelihood of clarity in the criminal side of this, the criminal case investigations, I should say, is slim to none. So therefore, there is going to be muddy waters. And so when I brought that point, Will, that's when I didn't really get a clear answer. And so that's kind of where it's still muddy. And I just kind of sometimes you have to kind of wait to come back to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like the thing is for the NFL, the Deshaun staying on the Texans is the best possible scenario. They don't want to use the commissioner's exempt list for Deshaun because if they do that, they are opening up a can of worms in which civil lawsuits could trigger the commissioner's exempt list. And I don't think that's something they want to do. They prefer criminal charges, or something, they don't want civil lawsuits to trigger the commissioner's exempt list if possible, although 22 of them, obviously a different story. And they can get away with this as long as he's on the Texans because he doesn't want to play and the Texans aren't going to play him. But as soon as he goes to the Dolphins or the Eagles or whoever it is, although Philadelphia seems less likely if Jalen Hurts playing all right. Like if he goes to the Dolphins, Stephen Ross is going to want to play him because he's going to cost him several first-round picks, and he's the theoretical franchise quarterback. So I feel like the NFL might.
It's so complicated because it's so multi-layered. It's like a star pulling in all different directions. And you really have to also calculate how the community is going to respond. The optics of him playing while it's still, unresolved. And what does that look like? And never mind the other players. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott might even be like, hello.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? So there are other players who will probably point out how they got treated with respect to their, situations and things like that. It was another thing that I brought up in the conversation. So I really feel like, Will, maybe not next week because it's still a little close to November 2nd, October 15th right now, but certainly rolling into the following week, it is going to get so interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be like boop, 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 with news. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Any other names to monitor, bigger names that you think might be on the trade block? Because it feels like NFL teams still are kind of on trading at the trade deadline, but because of the easier maneuverability of salary cap et cetera, that we're more likely to see trades, but the in-season trades just don't feel like they happen nearly as much as people want them to happen.
Yeah, I would. I'm gonna be honest. Well, I haven't had a chance to fully delve into this yet.
Yeah.
I was actually just talking about this with one of our assignment desk editors that I really wanted to do a deeper delve. But I will say, because the Seahawks were a part of my report earlier, that I do get the sense that there are. Not, I do get the sense. I know that there are discussions with regards to, what's going on with the cornerback situation there. Obviously, Stephon Gilmore just got, acquired or, picked up by, the Panthers. So that is off the table, though I feel like I kept talking about that in the offseason when you're looking at the depth chart. And I think it's a natural place in terms of the consideration, simply because if you look at that situation, they had DJ Reed and Trey Flowers. Then Trey Flowers came out of the starting lineup. Now he asked to be released. He's gone. Now they're doing a combination of DJ Reed and Sidney Jones, and then really trying to get under the hood of what's going on with that defense that finished first in points per game allowed over the last 8 games. And now they're back down to the second worst in terms of total, points, yards per game allowed. These are the conversations that are coming up. So I think that that's a very apt place to look. I'm not saying it will happen, because you have to kind of think about, who's out there, that kind of makes sense relative to what another team is looking for.
Right.
Certainly the pressure is on that Seahawks defense right now.
Yeah, Seahawks defense stinks. And they don't have Russell Wilson right now to make up for it. Long live Geno Smith. Big fan of Geno Smith on this podcast. Let's get to finally, look, it's the news of the week. And I don't know, the way it all went down was so fast and so swift. Like, I was doing radio hits on Monday afternoon, and the thing, what Jon Gruden wrote in his email about DeMaurice Smith, obviously unacceptable and just not terrible, right? But I didn't think on Monday afternoon that he would be fired. I maybe suspended, something like that. I just thought that was how it might play out because of the franchising question, like how much cachet he has with the Raiders and with owner Mark Davis. And then, the New York Times releases its report and the additional emails, and within an hour, he is he's gone. He's resigned. Where do the Raiders go from here? And is there more fallout coming? How do they? Is Mike Mayock going to be the guy long term at GM? Mark Davis, I believe, his comment was, "I have no comment. Ask the NFL; they have all the answers." A very, some would say, not exactly
flippant.
Yeah, a very snipped response there.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, based on everything,
that was a very broad question. So apologize.
No, it's fine. It's a broad conversation.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind, Will, is I feel like that Mark Davis needs to rethink his answer. With the gravity of the things that were revealed in the New York Times article, to just pass that off and say, ask the NFL, you can't do that as the owner of the Raiders. I understand and respect his relationship with Jon Gruden, the passion with which, he displayed as far as bringing him back, the organization bringing him back for the second time. And maybe
he called it the greatest day of my life when he hired Jon Gruden for the second time. Weird.
Right. And so that illuminates to you how hard it was to make this separation. Some feel like that is also illuminated by the fact that Jon Gruden resigned as opposed to being fired. And we can have a whole discussion as to whether he should be or not. And I just did a whole 30-minute conversation with KJ Wright the other day about it.
Right.
But so to me, that's the first thing that, as a representative of the league and the leader and owner, that he needs to rethink that comment. I think the head coach of the Rams really nailed it with his answer. I see there's almost 3.5-4 million people who have now viewed that.
Oh, the Chargers, right? With Brandon Staley, that's
right.
Fine. LA, whatever. And Sean McVay,
defensive coordinator for the Rams,
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I thought Brandon Staley's answer, and I linked that in my picks article today. It was eloquent, articulate, and profound in a very simplified way. Like, it's not hard. It's not like he, broke down the construction of various molecules and chemical elements. He just simply said, let's be nice to each other. let's treat each other in a positive fashion.
And look how profound that sounds in the noise of all, cancel culture and, faux outrage and, and all this other stuff. And, it's the versus culture. It's the or culture. It's not the and culture. I mean, all these words that people use to describe kind of what the temperature is of social media right now. But a couple of things I want to make a point about. One, I want to say that I do think it's a valid discussion about the gravity of the first comment and how much that warranted the outcome now. I do think that that's a worthy discussion, and whether we needed to have a compilation of other offensive comments to warrant or magnify and amplify just how offensive it was. I think that's just a worthy discussion.
No, for sure. And I mean, because it's like, it's not a great look to say, oh, it's just racist. Well, no, like it's fine. But like, now he's homophobic too. Well, now you have to like right, it shouldn't take two levels of bigoted comments to
right. Because you don't want to get really in the business of ranking sin, so to speak, right?
For sure.
It's like if one thing is this, then it's that. Now, and that's another separate conversation with what KJ was bringing up with regards to how long is cancel culture. How much do we condemn when we know also that those condemning and throwing stones also fall short? And, when does forgiveness get inserted? That's a whole other conversation too. Then there's the other conversation of the timeline, Will,
right,
which seems really tidy and too neat. And what do I mean by that? So if you look at the Wall Street Journal originally, okay, they said that the investigation into the Washington football team was about the workplace misconduct and that wrapped in the summer. Then they said after that there was the discovery of the 650,000 emails and that certain people within the league were directed to review that. And that only this past week, coming into the week of the the Wall Street Journal article, that was on Friday, that the beginning of that week or before that did the summary get to Roger Goodell. Let's just pause there.
Right.
Let's just pause that. No one's getting into the timeline, right? Let's just pause there. And this is what kind of Brian Urlacher was bringing up on my show too. What? You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to ask more questions with regards to I understand 650,000. Yes, valid. That takes a long time to get through. But we need to ask more questions about the process of review and the hierarchy that works through and who really knew what, when, and how long they've been. I think that's a fair question. Then secondly, the second question, Will, is when exactly did it get to the Raiders? What day?
Yep.
Because if you look at the statement from the owner, he said that he found out from a reporter Thursday, the night before.
Friday at the latest. He had the emails Friday at the latest, and Jon Gruden coached on Sunday. I mean,
but stop.
Okay.
The statement, I believe, says, and correct me if I'm wrong out there. If I got it wrong, fine. I got it wrong. But I think I remember that the statement says that he found out from a reporter Thursday. He said the night before, so that would have been Thursday. What? So that's another question. People in the Las Vegas area, you got to ask, got to get to that. Are you saying that you didn't hear anything from the league beforehand and that you first heard about this from a reporter? I'll make sure I got that right. But that's what I think I read. Okay. Then secondly, when you look at the ESPN article that came out on Sunday, Will, it's in that article, it says that they talked to him Friday night. And in that article, it says that Jon Gruden was aware of at least 5 to 7 emails. So then my next question would be, see, this is if I was...
And by the way, Josina, you are correct. So he said we were first, on a statement issued Friday evening, he said we were first made aware of the email, as in the DeMaurice Smith email, late yesterday, as in Thursday, by a reporter, and are reviewing it along with other materials provided to us today by the NFL.
Again, I brought this up on my own show. Again, this is what I'm saying. What? So to me, there's like things that are just sticking out like sore thumbs that I need to be pressed in that area. Okay. Because if I was in that press conference, the first thing I would be saying, well, wait, you found out from a reporter. So you telling me that seems too tidy, Will?
Yeah.
That's too tidy. Okay. So then let me advance the next point. So the next point is that, so on Sunday on the timeline, ESPN drops this article. They've talked to Gruden. Now Gruden's on the record. in that article, it says that he was aware of at least 5 to 7 emails at the time. So that was Friday night. Okay. But
he also, by the way, said in that conversation, he goes, I called Roger Goodell and they did an expletive.
That's my point.
They didn't say what it was.
So that's what I'm about to get to. So you're exactly right. So knowing whatever the content was of those 5 or 7 emails, which we don't know what was in those 5 or 7 emails, the response, at least per the report, I don't know if you said anything else. I can only go off what is in, the report on ESPN. Your response was, well, I also said other things about Roger Goodell too. So again, this is what I said on my show. Well, I have a problem with the word too, because it seems like there's a deflection there by saying the comment to DeMaurice Smith is not as bad because I also said vulgar things about other people too. That and then the second part about it is that per the article, you were at least aware of 5 or 7 emails. However, you addressed none of the other things that came out in the New York Times article in the initial comments, at least per the report. And these are, I'm like, this is what needs to be brought out. You know what I'm saying? And so now we bring it back full circle. The New York Times drops the article. We hear about more offensive language. And then, I hear behind the scenes that Gruden feels his words are getting twisted and all these other things. And I get it. There are players like KJ are coming out and saying to me, other players that are, not named, saying that this is not the man we know. And contrary to what people think they would be saying that I was reporting, I've heard a lot of people say, well, wow, that's not what I thought I would hear. However, I do think that regardless of the conversation of forgiveness, and I'm about to wrap this up, is that I feel like there needs to be a period where Gruden really does understand why it's not just twisting. You understand what I'm saying? Like really internalize that. And I do believe, because of my own faith and how I am as a person, because I know I darn fall short. My Twitter bio used to start with the word imperfect. I probably need to put that back up there. You know what I'm saying? So I get it, that I do believe if he can have like a serious internalization of that and reckoning of that, then shoot, he could even be a PSA, for the NFL in the future with regards to, being aware of, what's the word I'm looking for? Insensitive language.
Yeah, for sure.
All those things. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. And I mean, like, yes, it is not fair to take somebody's email from 2011 and say, welp, that's it. You need to go to Siberia and we don't ever want to hear from you again. And you're not allowed to rehabilitate your image, because we have seen far too many people in this country and in sports in general who, I mean, like second
in high offices, Will, in high offices.
In high offices. Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. And then the other thing really quickly, I know we'll wrap up here in a second, but like I saw Mike Florio wrote at PFT, and I agree with him completely that I think the headline is plenty of people are nervous about the Bruce Allen emails. Yeah, you think? I mean, Adam Schefter of ESPN has caught some, collateral damage as a result of these Bruce Allen emails already. And there are 650,000 emails from the Washington football team over a 10-year span. There is unquestionably going to be communications between Bruce Allen, who felt the flagrant freedom to use his work email, which I get that you're older and you might not get email, Bruce. It's still it says .nfl.com on there, bro. Like, set up a Gmail, set up something, a Hotmail, AOL, anything that's not your work email, man. Like, I mean, I know if you want to use it for business, use it for business. If you got to like email with Gruden about like, old man, like forward, like crude jokes, like maybe set up a different email address, but to my point is like, if he's willing to do all this stuff with Gruden and these guys who own these businesses and this group email thread, Lord only knows who he's emailed with, who he's emailed about when it comes to NFL business. And I would guess that while all of us want to see these emails shot out into into open space, that there are probably a lot of people who don't want them out there.
Well, I'll go back and again say this, like, even as I listen to us talk, right? Like, I just keep hearing KJ's voice in my head, right? Because, he says, listen, and even Brian Urlacher said this on my show. It's like, any of us who haven't, said things, privately or publicly that, may be considered offensive to, to some, or, just, done things that we regret, or whether it's in our young age, let alone, gosh, well, I don't even know what I was doing 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
well, actually, I guess 10 years,
right.
10 years ago, fine. 20, no dice.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is so it's not acceptable. It's not unassailable. But I am about redemption. You know what I mean? And I am about, being able to say, what, that wasn't the best choice. It got caught up or whatever. But I do feel like the initial apology to Chris Mortensen in that ESPN article was not it. So that's not it. That's just not it. And then KJ also told me that he, even after the resignation came, that he never said goodbye to the players. And so that was one thing that he did say he had a problem with, that he didn't say, he didn't say goodbye and properly address that. But I don't know, Will.
He got out of there so fast, Josina. It feels like he didn't. To me, it felt like he did not want
to deal with it.
One, he didn't want to deal with it. I mean, he left $60 million on the table and bounced an hour after a New York Times article dropped, emails that were probably going to get him fired eventually. But if the Raiders had continued to drag their feet, it does seem likely that the NFL is like, look, we got 650,000 of them and like 100,000 of yours, John. So, do whatever you like, but we are going to keep releasing these until, and if there's a decent chance that they get worse, I guess, like, I don't.
What, Will, though? And I'll say this. I was going to say this on my show, but I'll say it here, is that, I don't think, everyone's trying to, obviously bring out, or figure out what the origin of the leaks are, right? I have my own theory. I think people have their own theory, and most people probably agree on that theory. However, now that this article has come out from the LA Times, it does make me question a few things. I think Sam Farmer and the other gentleman that's on that article, or reporter, I should say, I think they did a really, good job. And following up, this defamation case that involves, Daniel Snyder, and I think it's Bruce. I'm not sure. So
yes, it's between Bruce and between Bruce and Dan Snyder.
So what that means, Will, is that there are other people who've seen these emails outside of the NFL.
It is interesting.
But that's what that means. And because the first thing that came to my mind and I missed it because I've been just so busy. I'm not as locked in on TweetDeck as I typically am. But when someone told me of the story coming out, the first thing I thought, I was like, but that was before I saw the LA Times. I was like, well, that's odd. Because everybody thinks, where these leaks are coming from. And I think that, the subject of who that person, the story was about, I was like, well, that's a amicable relationship. So that doesn't really make sense. So if you think about it, so you have to really think about these things, because sometimes the way things get printed and the way they answer it for you.
Just correct. There's always little breadcrumbs.
If it doesn't, that doesn't make any sense. So, but then when I saw the article, I was like, oh, now that makes sense. So at the very least, there are other people who have seen these emails as well. And it may be a multi-prong link.
Yeah. I love a good multi-prong situation.
It might not just be who's, entity that many of us think it is.
Right.
There may be another source here. Doesn't mean it was the original one, but at the very least, there are multiple eyes. And that is why when people are, asking me whether it's my editor, people are talking like, but why? And the reason why I say is because once you do the investigation and there's so many emails, there are multiple eyes on those emails. So that means that there are multiple people who know. So then now when you uncover the content of those emails, you cannot risk sitting on that and then the attention coming back to the NFL with regards to, well, you were sitting on this forever. And, so does that mean you don't have a problem with it? So now it has to get out. It has to get out. And then now you look, and then when we just went over the timeline, you see? Well,
no. I mean,
I don't have to finish my sentence.
Oh, sorry.
I'm saying I don't have to finish my sentence.
Yeah, no. I agree. The NFL, once the NFL was made aware of what Jon Gruden wrote in those emails, the NFL could not allow Jon Gruden to be employed by an NFL club moving forward because, as you're saying, if like 5 months down the road, these emails, which again, like some of them are in these court documents, these come out that the NFL knew about it for 5 months. It's like, you covered up for Jon Gruden despite these like racist and homophobic and misogynistic emails, and it would be a thing. So the NFL, yeah, but you're right. There's, I think the larger point is
you can't sit on it.
You can't sit on it. And I don't think we're done with we can be done with it for today, but like, I don't think like we as like an NFL following, NFL analyzing, entity at CBS are done talking about these emails. I think the emails are going to be a thing for a hot minute.
But here's where I disagree, and I'll put a button on it here. I feel like there would be nothing wrong with the NFL just having a transparent press conference.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it has to come out in this manner. That's really the thing. It doesn't have to come out in this manner.
They've been doing it like this for too long, though. They don't know anything else, I don't think.
But just have a press conference. This is the summary of our findings. We don't condone this. The same way the statement come out saying it was abhorrent, it's appalling, it's wholly contrary to the values. So these leaks, is just like, that's the part, again, I haven't fully said on this podcast who I think the leaks are from. We're having a broad conversation. However, I'm just saying the crumbs are the crumbs. That's what I'm saying.
Right, that's the lesson from today's podcast. Follow the crumbs. And there will be more crumbs, I will guarantee you. Josina Anderson, thank you so much. Awesome debut. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week. Follow Josina at Josina Anderson on Twitter. Watch her on CBS Sports HQ, of course, on Thursdays and Sundays specifically. Read her on CBSSports.com, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good show.